So the action of your guitar is important. And again, when you're down at the lower notes by the nut, it's much harder to play. So an F chord is really the hardest bar chord to play. So if you've got that nice and cleanly, then by the time you move up to an A, for instance, you'll have that, certainly that'll be easy for you. So at this point I would say stop the tape, practice, remember to keep your hand in a nice rounded, your wrist is rounded, your first finger is nice and straight, thumb behind the neck, giving you a lot of pressure behind there so you can, and it's right behind your first finger, giving you a really good support. Try not to keep this knuckle especially. People sometimes have a tendency to bend that knuckle when they're trying to play these, and then you're going to really get that muffled sound. Nice and straight joint there, and also try to keep your fingers up near the fret, right up against the fret, as close as you can. If they're down on the lower part of the fret, you're going to get more buzzing. You want to be right up next to the fret, nice and solid, and stop the tape now for a little while. Practice that, relax your hand, and we'll go on to the next bar chord. Well, you probably recognize those different versions of the E chord. You know that if you play an E chord and raise your first finger, that's all it takes to get an E minor. Now, just as the E could be moved up the neck, so can an E minor position be moved up the neck. So let's say you're playing a G at the 3rd fret. If you lift your second finger up, it becomes a G minor. If you're at the 5th fret, there's your A chord. Lift that finger up, it's an A minor. Now this is even a little bit trickier in some ways because that 3rd string also tends to get a little muffled. Sometimes your little finger might be leaning up against it, touching it. You don't want that to happen. So you've got to really round out your hand here. Play with the tips of your fingers. For this minor, sometimes you can even get your second finger to help push down that bar. Some people do that. So you have, at the 5th fret, this is where I am now, that's an A chord. Here's an A minor. If you go down 2 frets to a G, here's a G minor. Again, you can help that finger a little bit there if you want to. Down 1 more, it's an F sharp minor. If you go all the way up to the 7th fret, the E chord becomes a B. Remember we said the 8th fret was a C, so 1 down from the 8th fret to the 7th fret is a B. Lift up that finger and it becomes a B minor. Let's go from G at the 3rd fret to A minor at the 5th fret to B minor at the 7th fret to C at the 8th fret. C major, that is, so you got to get this finger back down again. And let's try it like this. From G, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, A minor, 2, 3, 4. B minor, 2, 3. C. Again. G, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. C. And let's one more time, let's say what these are. G, A minor, B minor, C, and back to G. Now, one thing that is very important is when you move these chords around, you want to keep your fingers down on the strings. Just let the pressure off them. You don't have to take your whole hand off and then find the chord all over again. All we're doing is sliding by playing the chord, lifting up, moving it up to the next fret you want to go to. If you want to make it a minor, you lift that finger and then press it down again. Relax, move it up. Relax, move it up. But keep your fingers on the strings as much as possible so you don't lose your place. And again, you might need to shake your hand out a little bit and relax, get that tension out of it. You're using a lot of muscles that you probably haven't used before. Now, there are songs that go to these chord progressions. Now you might say, well, why should I go to the A minor there when I can go to this old A minor that I usually play down here? Well, for one thing, it's got a different sound. You can hear that if you went from a G, your old G, to A minor, or if you went from the bar G to the A minor, what a different sound. Also, by relaxing your hand after you play the note, or the chord rather, you can damp the strings so you can get a much more rhythmic sound. Listen to this. I hit the strings and then relax my left hand. Or you can do it like this. 2 and 1. You can't do that with your open strings unless you actually damp the strings. You can, but if you just, the open strings, of course, keep ringing. So you get this nice rhythmic sound. Here's another reason you should learn how to use these bar chords. Let's say you're playing a song and it's got those chord changes. It goes from the G to the A minor to the B minor to the C. But somebody says, well, let's play that same song, but this time I want to play it in A flat. Well, if you don't play bar chords, forget it. You're not going to be able to play it in A flat. But if you know your bar chords, well, you know that this is G. G sharp and A flat are the same thing. If you come down from A1, it becomes A flat. If you go up from G, it's G sharp. So if you do the same thing starting on the 4th fret, now you've got A flat, B flat, or B flat minor rather. 2 more, C minor, and D flat. So here it is. You don't even have to know it. All you have to do is move up 1 fret and you've got it in A flat. Same pattern. And suddenly you're playing a song in A flat. Or how about an F sharp? Well, you know your F sharp is on the 2nd fret, and just do the same progression. And you've actually transposed the song from the key of G to the key of F sharp, or the key of G sharp or A flat, whichever way you want to call it. And this is one of the great advantages of using bar chords. Now once again, let's look at that E position. Let's go to the 3rd fret, which as you know is a G. If you lift up your little finger, now that one is very hard to get sometimes. That 4th string tends to buzz a lot. But if you can get that nice and clear, that's one way of playing a 7th chord. You probably remember if you play an E, lift this finger up. It's one version of an E 7th. So at the 3rd fret, it's a G 7th. Or if you want to make the 7th even more pronounced, and this is a stretch, but it's one that's well worth learning, get your little finger out. In this case, it's the 6th fret, and usually the 4th string when you do this does get muffled, but it doesn't really matter because you've got that same note up there on the 2nd string. And that's a nice sounding chord. Now again, this is like the E 7th. If you go to the 5th fret, and again the root is the same. The root is from the notes on the 6th string. There's an A 7th, B seventh. Remember, here's B, B minor, B seventh.